Okay, it's going to be another classic ROH review. This is going to be Death Before Dishonor 3. This is CM Punk's ROH World Title victory and the show that kicked off the Summer of Punk, June 18th, 2005, from Morristown, New Jersey. I believe the Morristown, New Jersey Community College, to be exact. And yeah, let's get right into it. This is a great show featuring one of the greatest matches in ROH history, followed by one of the greatest promos in ROH history, followed by one of the biggest returns in ROH history. So the ending, you're really buying the show for the main event. You get bang, bang, bang. You get three great moments: a great match, great promo, great return, and then it just definitely had that feel-good moment at the end, or just you after the show's over, it felt like you had just seen a classic show from top to bottom, even though it pretty much is I wouldn't say it's a one-match show, but it only has one classic match. So let's get right down to it. The first match of the night is BJ Whitmer and Jimmy Jacobs, the ROH Tag Team Champions, taking on Jimmy Rave and Fast Eddie of the Embassy. So Prince Nana comes out. This is AJ Styles' return after a pretty long layoff. I can't remember exactly how long, to be sure. But if you notice with this show, a lot of the TNA guys started coming back in. And, Jimmy Rave and AJ Styles, they had a feud over the Styles Clash. So, this kind of planted the seeds for a long and drawn out Jimmy Rave and AJ Styles feud. But right here, Fast Eddie actually takes the pinfall. BJ Whitmer and Jimmy Jacobs get their victory. Basically, they do like a doomsday device, but with BJ Whitmer holding the guy over his shoulders. I believe it was Fast Eddie. And then Jimmy Jacobs does a Hurricane Rana off of BJ Whitmer's shoulders. So that was pretty much their finish at the time. This was during the better days of BJ and Jimmy Jacobs, where they were pretty much little brother, big brother, that sort of thing going on there. And, to be honest, for a classic show, this is kind of a bland way to open up the show. But, the whole purpose of this was for Prince Nana to set the tone about the AJ Styles, Jimmy Rave feud. And they really, the Chinese girl, the Asian girl that came out with them, Jade Chung, I believe her name was. They really treated her like crap. They actually used her like as a stool to get up onto the ring, which is really disrespectful. So you had that going on there. Before we get into the rest of the show, let me just say this is definitely a must-have for CM Punk fans, not just for the main event and the promo, but, Punk is really all over this DVD. I mean, he's on commentary for most of the show. On top of that, he actually does commentary on some of his greatest moments from his debut in 2002 all the way until the Samoa Joe matches. He just picks out certain matches and moments, and he does commentary over them, and they take up like a huge bulk of the DVD. So you definitely get, like, by the end of the show, you basically become sick of CM Punk, and it's good because it works very naturally for the heel turn. So there we go with that. Next up, you had the Carnage crew taking on the Ring crew, Dunn and Marcos. What to say about this right here? This is very bloody. Dunn and Marcos, they're kind of like reincarnations of Mikey Whipwreck from ECW. Basically, they go out there and just, they're just happy to be out there, but they get their asses kicked, got very bloody, crazy spots. Carnage crew just bodying these guys up. Carnage crew were like these overweight drunk guys that, just were trying to pick a fight with anybody, and they hated Dunn and Marcos. So, these two teams probably wrestled a lot in Ring of Honor. This is probably as crazy as they ever got. And Dunn and Marcos got a nice standing ovation after they got their asses kicked. So that's pretty much how it was. Next up, we had a blockbuster matchup featuring a pure title match. Samoa Joe taking on Colt Cabana, two ROH legends right here. Beginning of the show, Colt Cabana was trying to have CM Punk on his Good Times, Great Memories segment, but it just didn't feel right with the Punk heel turn. So that did not happen. So Samoa Joe versus Colt Cabana, pure wrestling rules here. And it worked very well. This Punk was actually on commentary for this, and he talked about how, Cabana has like that switch where not many guys are able to pull it off, where they're basically fooling around and being more comedic during the beginning of the match, and But, Cabana has such great timing that he knows when to kind of switch it into that next gear. And it really worked here. You don't really look at Samoa Joe as someone that's like Chris Benoit type serious or Dean Malenko type serious. But, Cabana was such a clown at the beginning of this match. He almost made Samoa Joe look like he was on that Benoit Malenko level of like seriousness where they're taking the match so robotically. But yeah, Joe and Cabana just, really, really good. Some really good submission wrestling from Joe here. You definitely see the more technical side of Joe, and at the same time, Cabana was able to blend comedy and some good mat wrestling as well in this pure title match. I just thought it worked really well. You had good chemistry here. Just a real not a great match, but considering the stipulation and considering the place on the card, this just came off really, really well, and it just had a really nice tap out with Cabana tapping out. To like I believe it was an arm breaker by Joe, and just really good stuff. You get to see Joe at the top of his game, and Cabana in his prime here, and just a nice little undercard match. Really, really slept on match right there. It doesn't get a lot of attention because of everything that happened on this show, but just really good stuff. Next up, you have AJ Styles return to Ring of Honor, taking on Petey Williams. Basically, this is like a TNA match in Ring of Honor. Petey Williams' ROH career, really not much to say. Just a couple of appearances here and there. This is one of you remember Petey Williams because of this match, and a couple years later down the road, he faced Austin Aries at Glory by Honor for the ROH World Title. Petey Williams made a big name for himself in TNA in the X division. When TNA was at its hottest, Petey Williams was in the X Division title picture in TNA, and you remember him for the Canadian Destroyer, for being in Team Canada. Here against AJ Styles, basically this is kind of like a generic house show match with AJ just getting the feel-good victory here. They didn't really show what they can do to its full potential. They've had better matches than this. I believe their match at Victory Road 2004, the very first 3-hour TNA pay-per-view, that's a much better representation of AJ and Petey. This felt a little bit rushed, and I don't know, it kind of had like a sour taste. It was kind of like, I would say this about the match, a very interesting topic here, with, kind of the TNA, it kind of fit the theme of Punk turning heel, because it's funny that Punk turned heel on this show, because this show was kind of like the TNA guys coming back and reaping the benefits of all the hard work that Punk and Homicide and Samoa Joe and Gabe did, while all these TNA guys chose TNA over Ring of Honor. It's a very political thing to get into, and I would need more time to fully explain it, but you kind of get my drift there. You kind of have these TNA guys coming in and being able to make money on this platform while they really weren't there to save the company, if you know what I mean. So, a good AJ Styles feel-good victory here, and Jimmy Rave came out and hit Styles with the Styles Clash after the match was over. And like I said, this show set the tone for the really, really heavy and memorable AJ Styles and Jimmy Rave feud. If I remember AJ and Jimmy Rave, they had a big history in NWA Wildside. I believe AJ might have had something to do with Jimmy Rave being trained down there in NWA Wildside. So there's a big history there with AJ and Jimmy Rave. And Jimmy Rave is one of those guys which AJ, really put over towards the end of his ROH career. So there we go with that. So next up we have Roderick Strong and Jack Evans of Generation Next taking on Izzy and Deranged of, I believe they're a part of Lacey's Angels. And also there's a huge... there's like a 10-minute segment of Lacey in this on this DVD. Lacey is one of the most important women in Ring of Honor history. She used to be Jimmy Jacobs' girlfriend. I believe ended up being Austin Aries' girlfriend. So she has a huge history there. But she really had a great personality. Basically, her what should I say? Her gift to Ring of Honor was basically being a bitch, having a great personality, really telling off fans. She was great at calling men pigs, guys that were, in the crowd checking her out, or guys that were, looking at her sexuality and just kind of, how should I say this? guys that tried to hit on her, she would basically give them like the verbal woodshed. That's what I'm trying to say about that. And Lacey was great at that. So this is kind of like the first time she was able to manage a team to a big victory in ROH. So Izzy and Deranged, they used to be in Special K, I believe. Skinny dudes, they used to do a lot of spots. And they got the upset victory here on Roderick Strong and Jack Evans. Basically, Jack Evans told Roderick after the match that his head just wasn't in the game, and he's not feeling well and needed to take time off. And this is a huge letdown for Roderick and Jack Evans, part of Generation X. So it was a huge upset. Not a great match by any means, but definitely good stuff there. Just a huge shocking victory, and Lacey got the big win there for her team. So move on to the next match. We have James Gibson and Nigel McGuinness, Homicide and Azrieal, four-corner survival match. So sometimes in ROH you'll get these guys like Azrieal who never really went on to bigger and better things, but at that time he was pretty much a big part of the roster, and he was definitely a good wrestler. He was involved in some big-time matchups in 2005. But it's just one of those guys where you just kind of forget about, or really never went on to bigger and better things after this year. This match kind of felt thrown together looking at it on paper, but you have a lot of talent in this match. You have the 2005 ROH MVP. You have Nigel McGuinness here who really looked hungry here. Homicide brought his usual intensity, and it was hard to kind of make a story out of this, but it definitely it just had that feeling of competitiveness, which really carried the match and ended up being just a really, really solid match there. So next we have Low Key taking on Jay Lethal. These two guys have been going at it since Manhattan Mayhem. Just a lot of bad blood there. Jay Lethal at the time was still very young. He wasn't even 20 years old, but Low Key is one of those guys. They're both from the East Coast. They're both from the New York City area. Low Key from Brooklyn. Jay Lethal from Elizabeth, New Jersey. So they definitely had that level of comfort in the ring where they could get away with doing a lot of stiff and brutal things to each other. There were some good counters to the German suplexes here, good counters to the low-key double stomp. Jay really hung with Low-Key. Low-Key did a good job here. He actually made it look like Jay belonged in the same ring with him. So this is a good competitive match. Just definitely didn't have a finish, though. This kind of they dragged this out for a couple more months. Basically, the main feud was Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal versus Low Key and Homicide. So, ended up being like a crappy DQ finish here with Homicide actually carrying Low Key out of the ring, and the fans were kind of giving Homicide shit for the basically babying Low Key. So there we go with that. But definitely, even though you thought this might have been a nice blow off to the whole Low Key and Jay Lethal feud, it definitely wasn't, and we'd see the blow off later on at Punk: The Final Chapter. And then so like I said, guys, like most of this show, you get some solid matches, but there's nothing on it that's that I would say was great. So next up we have the ROH World Title match. You have Austin Aries taking on CM Punk for the ROH World Title. So this marks the end of Austin Aries' World Title reign. He beat Samoa Joe at Final Battle, and he carries it for almost 6 months and loses it to CM Punk here. Basically, before this match, CM Punk, it leaked that CM Punk was going to the WWE. So this is kind of going to be like his farewell match. And I was just surprised at how over Punk was. This is an amazing match because I've never seen someone so loved and celebrated during the match, and then they do a complete turn here, and everybody hates CM Punk to death after the match is over, and the promo and the heel turn. It really is unique. I don't think anyone's ever pulled it off this well, from being loved to hated so quickly. Maybe you've seen it in the WWE, maybe with Triple H or someone like that. Someone's probably come close to pulling it off, but nobody, I don't think, has done it this well. I do want to say this about Austin Aries. His performance here kind of gets overshadowed. It's kind of him just coming in and dropping the belt. Everything about Aries' title reign and his actual performance kind of gets overlooked there. But I just want to say Austin Aries had a great world title reign. It was the first ROH World title reign where I felt like the champion had pressure on him because, you know, he had to follow Samoa Joe and all he did for the ROH title. And then you can make the case that Austin Aries basically exceeded what Joe did for the ROH title. It's, you know, basically in the first 6 months, you could argue that because he defended the belt more. He wrestled overseas. I believe he defended it 10 different times in 10 different countries, to be exact. So, yeah, and Aries did. You know, he was on pace to having, you know, being probably one of the best ROH world champions ever at that time. So give Austin Aries credit. And he was really hated here. You know, there was a lot of fuck you Aries chants. You know, I don't think Aries was that hated. I just think they just wanted to see Punk win the belt. I definitely think it had to do with that. So yeah, and this is like the first time I ever remember like the boo yeah thing going, like where you know, Aries is giving him forearms, there's boos, and then Punk's giving him punches, and there's yes. So I mean, really, this kind of it definitely had like a John Cena, Rob Van Dam type of feel to it. But this happened the whole year before that. So if like this is the only match I could look to and say like this is where some of those chants really started at, you know, that level of crowd participation. So definitely this is one of the best crowds in ROH history. And it's funny, probably the two biggest matches as far as crowd reaction goes in ROH both happened in 2005. I would say this match and the Joe versus Kabashi match. And if you look at this match, you know, they really didn't, it was a great match and everything. They didn't really do anything crazy as far as spots go. It just had such a great crowd where they just feeded off of every single punch, every single maneuver, every single execution, every single suplex. They were just into everything. If I were to talk about a story of the match, the one story was that Austin Aries had a bad neck. He had just got key crushed by Low Key a couple shows ago. So he was really selling a neck injury, and yeah, the neck thing is a brutal injury, man. It's you know, I have a, you know, my neck's been pretty sore, and I'm not even a wrestler over the last couple of years, and I don't know what it's from, but you know, you could only imagine how if you're a wrestler, you could only imagine how bad. You know, a guy like Austin Aries' neck was, because, you know, guys like him, Benoit, Punk, and all these guys wrestle such a brutal style. So, you know, Punk actually went after the neck. He actually, you know, a lot of trash talking from Punk to Aries about, you know, how's your neck? So definitely good stuff there. Some good false finishes too towards the end. What happened? You know, Punk actually no-sold the 450 and countered it into the Anaconda Vice. That was a great spot. Punk eventually wins the match with a Pepsi plunge off the top rope, so that was cool. And then Punk finally wins the ROH World Title. You know, it's kind of funny. You know, I think a lot of people expected Punk just to win the belt and then forfeit it. Kind of like this, you know, the only thing I could think of that would parallel that would be Bryan Danielson, his PWG title victory over Chris Hero, where he basically won the title and just kind of forfeited it over or gave it over. And there was a lot of mixed feelings about that. That probably wasn't the right decision for PWG. But, you know, at that time, I don't think the PWG title was never, you know, PWG was never about the PWG championship the way ROH was about the ROH world title. You know, the ROH world title was so much more important than the PWG world title. So, but I don't want to get off track. So you get what I'm saying about that. Yeah, so I think a lot of people just expected Punk just to give a nice farewell speech, you know, kind of like what Bret Hart wanted to do, you know, kind of, you know, forfeit the title and leave in a nice way. That's exactly what Bret wanted to do. And I think a lot of people thought CM Punk was going to do the same thing. But as soon as he won the belt, he started getting really cocky on the mic and, you know, basically told the story about how a man found the snake and he found them in the snow and kind of nursed it back to life. And then the snake said, you know, the snake actually bit the old man and said, "Stupid old man, I'm a snake." And so he basically used the snake parable story, basically compared himself to a snake. And I think, you know, if you're to read between the lines with the whole heel turn and everything, it's kind of like how basically shitted all over the fans for actually buying into the fairy tale ending story of him winning the title and kind of being honorable on the way out. I think Punk wanted to use this opportunity to kind of shove it up the fans' ass that the only reason why the company was in business was because of his efforts, and basically went out of his way to say how he was better than Joe, he was better than AJ, and if it wasn't for him, this company would be down the toilet, and that he was gonna walk away with the ROH World Title and keep the ROH World Title. And not obey the code of honor. So that's how it was. And then bang, you get the return of Christopher Daniels, who in 2005, was really hot. You give Daniels credit because in TNA, he made the X Division title, almost bigger than, pretty much on the same level, maybe even bigger than the NWA TNA title, the heavyweight title at the time, which was held by Jeff Jarrett. So yeah, Daniels' return got a great reaction, and Daniels even in the aftermath, he talked about how he had to choose TNA over ROH. The reason it made sense for Daniels to have this big return was because it was actually CM Punk that Pepsi plunged Daniels through a table. That was kind of a way of writing Daniels off of Ring of Honor shows, because he actually, behind the scenes, Daniels and AJ and guys like that were asked to choose between TNA and ROH because of the sex scandal or the pedophile scandal with RF Video and Robbie Feinstein. They had to choose a side, and Daniels and AJ chose TNA, while CM Punk and some other guys chose Ring of Honor. So so that this show really planted the seeds for the whole ROH TNA. I wouldn't say it ever became that big of a war, but yeah, I mean, if when I look back on it, if you want to look to a reason why ROH and TNA never lived up to their potential, I would say that one of the reasons why the WWE's never had that big of a competition, I think you look to this whole split between ROH and TNA. I just think it would have been so much easier to compete with the WWE, and if there would have been such a better alternative to the WWE if you didn't have this split with certain guys choosing TNA and certain guys choosing ROH. Because when we're looking back on it, it just kind of feels like both companies didn't live up to their potential. Both companies started losing guys, and you could even I know CM Punk. God, it's crazy to think about. We could spend all day getting this deep and everything, but I think if you look back to CM Punk departing to the WWE, deciding to leave and go to the WWE, I think you can look back to this decision as one of the cracks as to why these two companies never really were that competitive with the WWE. I just think if there was a way where you could keep all this influx of indie talent together without them leaving, kind of like and I think Punk initially wanted to do that. I think he initially wanted Daniels and AJ and all these guys to stay together and see how far we can take it. But I just think it got to a point where Punk, where he even said he started to get bored, and I think probably one of the reasons why Punk so quickly accepted WWE offer was the word that a lot of the TNA guys were starting to come back. So that's pretty much it, guys. This started off the summer of Punk in a big way. So if you're a fan of CM Punk and everything that he stands for. We could talk all day about CM Punk. There's the whole UFC situation. I could spend all day talking about that. We could spend all day talking about, Punk's mentality was, him leaving WWE was at the right choice in retrospect. But yeah, man. I mean, if you're looking back on it, these shows right here they just show you how versatile and how great he was. And looking back on it, the guy was born to be a professional wrestler, and looking back on it, pro wrestling was just, that was CM Punk. To me, after seeing his last fight or seeing highlights of the last fight, it just, to me, that just does it. You respect him for trying it, but basically he was born to be in Ring of Honor, and the stuff that he did in ROH, that's always going to be the CM Punk that you know and love. So definitely check out the show if you haven't seen it. All right.